So you're saying some of these freelancers are going to go from being freelancers to AI enablers,
Exactly.
or
The people that survive are going to be the AI enablers. The people that don't do that are going to lose their job, basically, is how I see it.
all right, welcome to another episode of Actionable. I have my friend here, Hayk Saakian, cousin of previous guest of ours, Vlad Makartumian. You guys are both co-founders of many companies before, but right now you guys are working on Logic Inbound, your guys' SEO agency.
Mhm.
Lots to talk about. You guys are thinking about pivoting right now. Why don't you give us like a kind of 15-20 second spiel about who you are, what you're about, and we can take this many ways.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'll give you a quick kind of elevator story or whatever. So, came to this country, US, when I was 6 with my parents who immigrated from Russia, originally born in Armenia. I've been doing startups and tech companies since I was in middle school. In middle school, I was in the computer class. It was like after school thing, and we built HTML websites. So I actually built part of the middle school website back in the day. From there, I was always interested in coding and programming, so I always took like the optional classes and stuff to learn more about it. And then in high school, got into it in business. We were originally going to book sales, finding books, reselling them on Amazon. So we buy them for like $1, sell it for 10. And then I built an app to help automate that process and make it more efficient. And we started looking at other apps. This is back in 2009 when the iPhone started coming out. And then, you know, eventually went to Berkeley for a year, ended up dropping out because the stuff I was learning was outdated by the time they were teaching it. Then we built a CRM company. We had clients in 7 different states, but we really sucked at sales and marketing. So we said, oh, let's just focus on doing that really well. And that sort of pivoted into Logic Inbound that you have today. So been in sales and marketing for almost 7 years now, and now we built up a pretty good expertise, a good client base, and now we're looking at sort of the next opportunities here.
Do you feel like dropping out of school? Were you early on this idea of that the school is kind of outdated for most people? Um,
Not really. I mean, I gave it an honest chance, is what I'll say. Right? I was skeptical, and then I went in. I was like, pretty much confirmed my assumptions. I met some cool people there, no doubt. Right? I think if you're somebody who's like really good at networking, even if you learn zero things at college, you can meet some really great people. So I went to UC Berkeley, for example, and I met some of the smartest people that went on to work at startups and like do a bunch of scientific research. So good connections, but it wasn't from what I learned there that was valuable. That's what I'll say.
do you think when you have kids, you're going to send them to school?
If they want to do it, I'll pay for it. Assuming I'm doing well and all that.
Right, but you wouldn't do it like I'm assuming our parents did, where it's like, We came to this country for you to get an education. This is an absolute must. This is the gateway to your success. You have to go to school."
I think it's a good option if you're aimless, if like if you don't know what to do and you're just kind of
Mm.
exploring, because you do meet a lot of people, right? You can like do a project or something. A lot of companies were started in colleges or by college students, just solving their own problems. So I think similar to like primary school, high school, things like that. It's kind of an extension, is how I think about it. And then of course you
Nice.
have like you have like trade school and stuff like that. Like if you want to be a welder or electrician or a doctor, like you have to actually learn those practical skills. You can't just go cutting someone's heart open with no practice. So
What do you think is the best way for somebody that is aimless to taste test, so to speak, in like the most efficient way and figure out what it is they want to do? At least in the near term, not maybe for the rest of their life.
yeah, that's a great question. So one of the first, I actually remember some of the first business books I read that helped me figure this out. One of them was called 4 Hour Work Week by what's his name?
Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss. Yep, and then Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk back in the day, one of the first books. So what that really helped me realize is that you can test a lot of things pretty quickly, and really the key thing that I look for is customer demand or customer interest. Like, am I solving a problem, or am I doing something that people really resonate with and they care about, right? And then that was kind of the first thing that we learned back in the day, is just talking to people, pitching it. Nowadays I think I have a little bit more sophisticated perspective now that we've got some things under our belt. Like, I know how to run Google Ads campaigns, so I can put up a landing page and put up some ads and see what the conversion rate's like for example, or we can do a cold email campaign and see how people respond, things like that. Um, talking to mentors, some key lessons learned that would have saved us some time is thinking about like market size. How many people out there have this problem that you're trying to solve? Is there a potential to be a big business, or like how urgent is the problem? Is this something like water in the Sahara where people will die if they don't get it, or is it something that's like a really nice to have? Maybe a luxury, but it's people aren't gonna beat down your door to try to get that product or service from you. So those are some of the things I think about nowadays.
So you guys are obviously, which we'll get into later, thinking about pivoting and creating some kind of product or SaaS, maybe some kind of
Mhm.
technology outside of your guys's SEO agency. But if you were to give somebody just the juice in a few sentences, what is, in your opinion, the most efficient way to test out, let's say, startup ideas today?
Um, for me, I personally lean on Google Ads and things like cold email just because that's where my experience is. Other people, if they're better at cold calling or other sales strategies, like I would lean on those. There's a book by this author called Gabriel Weinberg called Traction, which is different from another book called Traction by Gino Wickman. But anyways, this is the guy that founded DuckDuckGo, Gabriel Weinberg, and he talks about in his book like 10 or 15 different channels that startups and new companies can use to grow their company. And so, generally speaking, if the principles of the problem you're solving are valid, you've kind of done the paperwork, the forecasting, then from there it just comes down to selling and seeing if you can repeatedly get customers for your need, right? Back in the day, maybe I would have spent 6 months building a whole thing before showing it to somebody. Nowadays, I'm just going to sell it and see if people are interested, whether that's, a landing page with like a fake payment form or some other method to see if it's a real need for people before investing time and effort into solving the problem.
Okay, so to boil it down for people, you'd have a way of collecting payment for whatever you're selling. So let's say through Stripe, whatever. You'd have a
Hmm.
site that you would drive traffic to. So
Hmm.
if it's e-commerce, it could be a Shopify store, or it could be just a normal whatever Squarespace website with some kind of
Hmm.
offer on it. And then the way you drive traffic. Oops, the way you drive traffic would be through some kind of uh, form of paid ads, Google ads or Facebook ads.
Yeah, exactly. Paid search or paid social, depending on what kind of problem you're solving. Paid search is good if people are already aware of the problem, like like they broke a pipe or something. They're gonna find a plumber. They're gonna search online.
Mhm.
Paid social, I found, is better for problems that people don't really have a name for or they don't like actively search for. So examples might be like how do I impress people or how do I elevate my social status? Like most people are not proactively searching for that, but that's something they're thinking about in the back of their head. If you say, "Hey, buy this product and it'll make you feel amazing," right? Here's 10 people that it worked for or whatever, right? That might attract people that aren't actively searching on Google.
Okay. And you guys are you and Vlad are actively testing out different ideas. W- What are the criteria that you guys are using to narrow down? I mean, if there's any secret sauce that you don't want to give away, by all means, don't give it away. But whatever you want to talk about, what are you guys using as far as criteria to either qualify or disqualify some of these ideas that other people can use as they try to find what they want to work on?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Great question. So, like, Vlad and I really thought about this a lot, and so we boiled it down to a series of actually Chat GPT prompts. So, in the past, you do some of this research and thinking yourself. Now with AI, you can get a little bit more scientific and more in depth to really kind of figure it out. So, I'll give you kind of the big picture version, and then happy to expand on any details. Um, but I would say the most important things are kind of the first three key aspects that we look for. So first of all, we try to find is there like a clear ideal client profile, meaning that there is a group of people that you can specifically define that really has this problem or is looking for your solution that you could point to. So just to be specific, That would be maybe there's specific Facebook groups, maybe there's specific search terms they're typing in, maybe there's like a NAICS code, like a specific industry, the specific conferences they go to, whatever. The more specifically you can define them and the more easily you can find them, the more likely you have a good ideal client profile. So that's part one. Then the second part that we look at is the client value proposition. So this is borrowed from Alex Herbosi's formula for his value equation. So, A would be the dream outcome. Like, are you achieving something that's really meaningful or aspirational for that person? B is the perceived likelihood of achieving that outcome. Like, are you doing this in a way that's credible or a way that people would believe is likely to work? C is the time that it would take to achieve that. Like, if you have a solution that can solve a problem faster than everyone else, that's a big differentiator. And then D is the amount of effort required from the person. So an example would be like a restoration company. Like, let's say your pipes leak and your basement's flooding, right? Restoration company, their goal is to solve that problem very quickly without you really doing a lot of effort yourself. You just call them, you pay them, and then they fix the problem. That's the idea. Versus, like, let's say an ebook that teaches you how to fix your broken pipes. That's a lot of your own effort. Like, you're going to learn a lot. Like, sure, maybe you'll save some money, but most people are not going to DIY an emergency situation. But if your toilet is leaking and maybe it's costing you money, but you don't have water everywhere, it's not as urgent. You might just try to do it yourself or find something else. So that's number two, is basically the value equation. And then number three is there's some overlap for number three, but it's what is the odds that they're going to be buying now versus buying later. So again, using that flooding example, if there's flooding in your basement, but the water level, it's rising like 1 centimeter every 10 hours, you might shop around and call a couple different companies. But if it's like rising up like a foot every 10 minutes, like, you need somebody out there now to fix it. You can't wait to find the best price or to really shop around. So going to that same example, if you're solving a problem that's very urgent, then it's easier to differentiate yourself, because it's really just being in front of people when they have the problem is all it takes sometimes. Finding those customers and being there for them.
And are the solutions that you guys are looking at all tech based?
No, not necessarily, because sometimes just using modern practices or technologies in a traditional business is a big differentiator. So we were talking to a mentor, this guy named Jay Bartot. He's the CTO of Madrona Ventures, which is a big VC group here in Seattle. And he said, and I really resonated with this, they really are looking for more tech-enabled businesses nowadays. So imagine like an accountant, maybe a traditional accountant, they're doing everything with traditional technology, standard processes, right? A tech-enabled accounting company might be fully remote, right? As opposed to with an office, they might be using things like cloud software, automation to speed up the process versus manually going through and doing all the bookkeeping. And they're just going to be 5 to 10x more efficient theoretically, if they're really achieving this. So we're looking at some options like that. For example, doing a restoration business, but applying all the latest innovations to it that the industry hasn't caught up to yet.
On one of our calls, your cousin, co-founder Vlad, said that AI today is Bitcoin at $1,000, but
Mm-hmm.
only, I asked a follow-on question. I said, how many of your guys' 20 ideas are AI? And only like a handful of them were AI.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because, does that kind of prove that not all solution, like AI is not going to take everybody's jobs? It's not going to create a solution for absolutely everything out there? Or are you guys hedging that bet by coming up with kind of more near-term solutions that are not AI based, that are, like tech forward, maybe tech enabling, but not all completely AI based?
Yeah, I guess the closest way I could answer that question is through a metaphor. If we look at other kind of world-changing inventions, so things like electricity, for example, or things like motors or stuff like that, like people still need to get from point A to point B. So there are still going to be transportation companies, right? But instead of horse transportation companies, people that make horse wagons, now there's car manufacturers. So, it might be that a lot of these businesses are kind of rethought or relabeled given the new technology. But I think the fundamental problems that people have are still going to continue to exist. So that's why when I think about that question, it's like, yeah, there's maybe a couple of ideas that are equivalent to like starting an electric company or being like a electrical installer, putting appliances into people's houses in the 20s, for example, when they never had them before, or connecting electricity to people's houses, right? Everybody has electricity in the US now, but you could actually make that a business in another country where maybe it's not penetrated. So in the same way with AI, I think you can make an AI business that's like an AI for AI type business, or you can make just a normal business that uses AI to be a lot more efficient and effective. So, um, does that answer the question from how you're thinking
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, it does. It actually makes me think of a pod that I was listening to today, that the new My First Million pod came out,
Mhm.
and one of the ideas that they were throwing around up there, um, Upwork, which is a channel that you guys do pretty well on. They were thinking about how one could buy some of the top performing Upwork profiles on Upwork,
Mhm.
but the profiles would have to be doing tasks or jobs that can like easily be solved by like an AI agent. So they basically arbitrage the traffic on these Upwork profiles,
Mhm.
but they significantly lower the cost and increase the output by having an AI agent do all the basically the jobs that that profile is responsible for or gets inquiries
Mhm.
for. And it's kind of like a Upwork labor arbitrage play. I thought that that was
Yeah.
super interesting. Is that anything that you guys have ever kind of kicked around?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea to consider because there are many jobs that are currently being outsourced that could definitely be automated or potentially scaled up. So a simple example for an AI, here's a very simple one I was using the other day. It's like I had 300 Word files. I need to convert them to PDFs, right? So how do I solve this? I could assign it to a virtual assistant and just say, hey, go, print as PDF for each of these. I could find a tool or I could ask the AI to solve that problem for me. So I started with the AI and then it found a website for me to use. And then I just did it through the website, uploaded, drag and drop. So
What
I
was the
think
website?
it was just some online two PDF fly by night website, but some guy made a website that solved that exact problem and the AI helped me figure out that solution. So I think in the same way, you're going to see that with some of these different tasks that are potentially things like transcription, writing are the most obvious ones that a lot of these tools can just do out of the box. But there's going to be more and more as they get more advanced. So for example, Chat GPT now, you can upload images, it can like read pictures, right? So you can imagine all the new types of tasks on Upwork that could take over. Things like conversion analysis. I was talking to a friend about that, right? Like does this homepage have a call to action? How strong is the call to action? Things like that. You can have it visually evaluated. Right.
How are you guys using AI today?
Today, we're using it to really look for opportunities for improvement in a lot of different processes. So, a simple one is just in using AI to enhance some of our existing tools. So, for example, there's a type of advertising called local service ads for Google, where people do a search and they see you at the top. It says like Google guaranteed. You can call in, right? So we're saying, okay, can we offer this to all of our clients because they've expanded it? It's nationwide now, right? So a simple way that we're using AI in that example is we're just putting every client's website in and saying, hey, ChatGPT, scan this website, figure out if they're in an eligible category, and then give me a list of all the ones that we can sell this to as a simple example. So there's a lot of like little day-to-day applications like that where you might have outsourced something to a VA to analyze, where now you can just have ChatGPT do it for you quickly and move faster on that.
Okay, so a lot of sorting. I noticed that I used to have, going back to Upwork, I had a bunch of blog writers that I had just on
Hmm.
standby for any time I needed written content. And those guys all fell by the wayside. Like as soon as I think GPT-3 came out, where
Hmm.
it would like write halfway decent blogs. And this is before where, Google would it wasn't sure if they weren't sure if they wanted AI content, and then they kind of caved in because everyone's doing AI content. You can't really like downrank it. You can now just only scrutinize it based on how relevant and how high quality it is.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, like anything having to do with creative stuff, whether it's Midjourney, you can make images on Midjourney. You can write content all day long with things like ScaleNut or Chat GPT, uh,
Hmm.
any kind of sorting tasks. Like it's basically it's just like a non-autonomous VA that every little minute little change or task you just have to go and correct it if it doesn't know what to do. But I think it's going to be wild what happens in the next year or two where these things become more and more autonomous and you can just give it a to-do list and say, "Hey, I need you to do this every day by the hour on the hour," and it'll just make it'll turn one person into like 10.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think the sort of gap that is revealing itself or opening up is similar to what you see in sort of the freelancing world, where like a client who doesn't really understand their problem, like they don't know the questions to ask, is still going to be a client that's out there. So you would need to have AIs that can figure out, okay, you're trying to solve this problem of growing your brand. Here are the ways you would need to do that. And now here are like the AI agents that can execute those methodologies for you, right? I think in the short term, what we're seeing is the people that are really articulate and they know exactly what they need are getting the most out of these tools. Like, oh, I'm an SEO agency. I know I need content. Let me use AI to make content and rank, right? But if I'm a less sophisticated person or maybe a business owner, I don't even know what the ranking factors are for SEO or what I need to do. So I'm just posting on Upwork or whatever. I'm saying, hey, I just need to get customers. I need to get leads. Like, I don't care how the sausage is made. They're just posting on there. So the AI agents need to get like a little more sophisticated to do that kind of problem solving, consultative sales type of stuff. And that's where I think the opportunities opening up for those freelancers and VAs, like those bloggers that got displaced by ChatGPT. Their remaining opportunity, from my point of view, is really leveling up their sales skills and getting more consultative and problem solving. Like, oh, you need blog posts? Great. I'm an AI content writing expert with 3 years of experience. I can pump out 1,000 blog posts for you with ChatGPT. You don't have to worry about the prompts. You don't have to worry about anything. You just pay me and I do that for you. And it's 100 times less expensive than paying someone to do it manually.
So you're saying some of these freelancers are going to go from being freelancers to AI enablers,
Exactly.
where
The people that survive are going to be the AI enablers. The people that don't do that are going to lose their job, basically, is how I see it.
that makes sense. That makes sense. And I can see all the info product ideas just pouring in right now. Of like, here's we won't name any names, but Vlad and a female lady that we met on his birthday who's totally crushing it with that. I don't know if she wants her spot blown up, so I'll keep her name to myself. But yeah, there's tons of opportunity to either enable through service or enable through an info product of like, here's what you need to know today. But the cool thing about the info product is like that information might be outdated in like 6 months, and you have to, and that's why the service would stick around as well because these things change on a dime. Like ChatGPT
Mhm.
3 was like, how long ago did that come out? A year
Yeah,
less.
exactly. I remember like less than a year ago, you had all these training guides of like, here's the weird way you have to specify how you want it to make an image. You have to like give it all these artistic styles, and there's like a paragraph long template you have to use. Okay, what is it like nowadays? Well, now Dolly is built into ChatGPT. You can just describe what you want in normal language, and then it turns that into like a prompt for the image AI, and then that gives you an image that you want, and you can have a conversation about it. It's like, oh, make it more red, right? There's a whole meme nowadays where people say, make this type of image, but make it more like this. So show me a picture of a cat, but make it angrier, and then they say make it even angrier, and they keep doing that 10 times to make it funnier, right? But that's kind of what this is enabling is, you don't have to be a prompt expert as much as you did today as you did a year ago. Who knows what it's going to be like, a year from now, right? How much easier or simplified it might be.
On one of our little brainstorming calls, I don't know if you quoted somebody, if it was your own quote, but you said AI is basically our industrial revolution. Do you have
Mhm.
any predictions? Just Hail Mary predictions, no bets, no money involved, but just like where do you think this whole thing's going to go in, let's say, the next 2 years, short term?
Yeah, I think short term is probably easier to predict. I think if the pace of innovation seems to be keeping up, right? It's not like night and day today as much as it was in January. There's still improvements like the image recognition. And I think I heard that maybe one of the motivators for some of the recent drama with OpenAI is like they made a big innovation and then maybe Sam didn't share it or he did share it or they disagreed. But yeah, this stuff is advancing faster than we can really predict. So, let's just say for the sake of the example that you have like true AI, quote unquote, right? Like some kind of thinking machine that can think at least as well as a human. Then in 2 years, right, there's still going to be a lot of infrastructure to build up. Like, how do we build the robots that you can plug this AI into, or what type of mechanisms does it need, right? There's still a lot of just like with cars, right? You still need to build out the highways and the roads. So there's a lot of infrastructure that will need to be built. But I think the world will start changing very quickly. Unfortunately, just due to how capitalism is in the world, I don't think it's going to be equal, right? There's still people in the world that don't have internet access, that don't have electricity access, and things like that. So it's probably going to be the same thing with AI. I'm guessing, first world countries, U.S., Europe, things like that, you're going to have the most advanced in-person robotics. Thankfully, the stuff that's over the web, that's a lot more accessible. So you might be in a remote country and still taking advantage of like a super intelligence that can give you strategic guidance, help you start a business, innovate, whatever. Access to information, I think, is a key thing that will spread. But I don't think we're going to be like in the Jetsons era or whatever in 2 years. I think that a lot of construction and building and stuff has to happen to get there.
For the college kid that's sitting here listening and maybe doesn't have like all the business experience or the technical experience uh, to take full advantage of this opportunity, what would you say is the low hanging fruit for them to kind of get into the space and just bite a chunk off of this iceberg that's going by all of us right now, um, and get into it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would say there's two things I would think about. One is using the AI itself as a learning tool. Like I've used Chat GPT to teach myself a lot of things a lot quicker than I had in previous times, right? If I wanted to learn how to build like a Google Apps script plugin a year ago, I'd have to read documentation, go through tutorials, do an example, blah, blah, blah. Like I can do that in an hour now just by having it create an example for me for my exact situation. So for me, what helped me personally was trying to solve my own problems or kind of automate my own challenges or opportunities. So if you have, if you're a college kid, right, and you have friends, right, look at what the common problems are that you all have, and just try to solve them with AI and see how easy or difficult it is. I think I remember seeing a quote or something from Paul Graham where he talked about this, where the gist of what he was trying to say is that with a lot of technology, people create these tools and automations that are kind of a solution in search of a problem where it doesn't really solve a real problem, but they just like using the tool to solve that problem. What he was trying to say after that, he said, with the current wave of AI, there are so many problems that the current technology can solve that just haven't been recognized or uncovered. So, literally, just throwing AI at whatever problems are uniquely in front of you just to see how it does will potentially uncover insights that other people are overlooking just because they're not in that domain. There are a lot of like very niche industries. I was just researching this guy that does like what's it called, scientific equipment manufacturing. Like they manufacture like specific types of equipment that you use in a medical lab, right? Like how many of those people are thinking, I wonder what problems ChatGPT could solve in this space? Probably very few, unfortunately. So if you're kind of younger and more open-minded to different solutions, just trying and seeing, can it do this, can it do that, and if it does it even half as well, could you improve it to do 80% of the job of a human? Those
What
are
would a prompt look
really
like?
sorry.
What would a prompt look like, if you were to type that into ChatGPT? How would you write that prompt for the lay person out there? You'd open
Oh
up
god.
ChatGPT. You'd say, "Hey, how can I apply AI in X industry?" Question mark.
I would even make it more specific, start with industry, but then also talk about specific problems. Like if I'm a student, think about what are my problems? How I need to learn this subject. I need to figure out how to solve this coding challenge if I'm a computer science student. Or, I have these problems in my dorm. Like I need to find somebody who can cut my hair for cheap because I'm on a budget. How do I do that? It's really looking for just asking about telling it about your problems and trying to figure out if you can throw AI at the problem to solve it. So, for example, for us, in our agency, one of the things we stumbled on is like, hey, we can actually use Chat GPT to do market analysis based on historical data, right? The new stuff, obviously, it's harder, but we can say like, what is the median income of all these different types of businesses? Who makes the most annual revenue, right? And sometimes it's not accurate, but a lot of the times it hits the mark closer than you'd think. So basically, the key thing is just to really let go of your assumptions about what is and isn't possible, because that's being defined like now, right? Saying something like 6 months ago, Chat GPT can't write, a 1,000 word essay because there's a character limit or whatever. Like that limitation's gone, right? Even a couple months ago, you could only put in 4,000 characters. Now it's 128,000. That's gone. So a lot of these limitations are going to disappear. So just being at the edge and being at the borders where those new opportunities are going to come up.
And it goes back to, I think, what we talked about earlier. The college kid can also learn how to not just solve the problems, but just be an AI enabler. I
Mm-hmm.
think pre before GPT and AI got really popular, I think the low hanging fruit for the college kid was to be a software enabler. So you can go be a pro at Zapier, and you can go to all these different companies, and you could start like an AI automation agency. These days, you could do the same thing with writing like technical blog content using AI, right? Some AI software that helps you write content. Like ScaleNet, for example, was one that I brought up earlier. Surfer SEO is another good one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that probably those two things right there could get you pretty far. And then you can, once you get some cash flow, you can go spin that into some kind of like bigger problem or bigger product. Um, I'm curious, you guys now have this agency that you've been working on for 7 years. You're spinning out into doing something else. Are you planning on keeping the agency around and sort of just having a manager and having it run on its own, or is it something that you guys are hoping to like full time pivot into this new thing?
Well, from a strategic point of view, we want to leverage what we have as much as possible. So, for example, let's say we started a new type of small business, right? We would want to utilize our agency to help grow that small business, right? And thankfully, we've got employees and we've got team members in place, so we're not 40 hours a week working in the day to day. We're more focused on growth at the moment. So, from my point of view, the main thing that we're focused on as leaders is just growing the business. And so if there's bigger or better opportunities that are faster growing, we can put that fuel in that direction. At the same time, we've got people to take care of customers, make sure that, we're providing great service and generate referrals. We've got sales channels that still produce. So thankfully, we're in a place where the business is not 100% reliant on the partners. It's still reliant to some extent, but it's enough that we can test the waters on some of these other things, basically, see if they make sense.
What are the things that are basically keeping you guys rooted in that business that you couldn't just cut loose and do something else, or at least free up even more of your time?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I would say it's kind of scalable, profitable, repeatable sales. So that means is, for example, for the fulfillment team today, I could do zero fulfillment for a year, and I know the work is going to get done. It's going to be done to a certain standard. Like we're going to have successful outcomes from clients. If we need to hire or replace people, that's all figured out. Our management team can do that. On the sales side of things, we've tried a couple things. We have, I would say, two channels that work fairly well. One of them is referrals, which is highly reliant on us as individuals. So that's not something that can really function without a partner actively driving it. We have channels like Upwork and different freelancing websites where those can be fairly well delegated. In the past, when we tested out salespeople, they can manage those leads and close them. Building up our outbound channels, whether that's through some kind of gifting strategy or vertical expertise or conferences, whatever that looks like, is kind of the focus for me at the moment. So if that's really in a stable place, my golden goose would be, I bring on a salesperson, I say, hey, here's our playbook for outbound. They do it profitably, they grow the business, and we're set. So that's what, in terms of the internal, what's holding us back, that's the biggest thing I'm concerned with, because I wouldn't want to step away from a company that folds in a year because natural churn and not enough growth. It'd be kind of a I'd be kind of deflated, right? I want to make
Yeah.
sure this thing is successful, basically.
Yeah.
That's why in some ways incorporating it into the next thing is another option that we're looking at.
What's been the, since we're talking about service-based businesses right now, what has been the number one form of lead gen for you guys of everything you've tried? I know you guys recently ran like a cookie campaign. We can kind
Mhm.
of talk about that. Couple other things. What's been the most reliable form of getting customers for your business?
Yeah, for sure. So if the key factor you're looking at is reliability, I would say in the 7 years we've been in business, referrals have been the number one most reliable way to get business. It's kind of a boring answer because it's not, AI driven or whatever. It's not really based on technology, but just, doing good work for people and consistently asking for referrals from customers, from partners, from, other people in your network. That's really been the key thing that's held us up over the years. Um, so anyone that's doing client services or B2B, like if you're not getting a good amount of business from referrals, like enough, at least 1 million a year, you can do completely through referrals in almost any business. So if
It's
you're not
also a
doing
tough
it,
answer,
yeah, it's not
because
easy. Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough answer because for the person that's just starting out, they're like, how can I even get referrals? I don't even have clients yet. You know what I
Uh,
mean? Right?
oh,
So
that's
yeah, like you've got
that's the secret. I can share how we built our business through referrals from day one. So
let's hear it.
you probably, everybody, hopefully, by the time you made it to 18 or 21 or whatever, like, a non-zero number of people, some people in your network. And if if you think about MLMs or network marketing or all those people, like, how do they do it, right? They just tell you, hey, talk to every single person you know. So funny enough, it's basically the same thing for a new business owner, except instead of selling, like a questionable lifestyle pyramid scheme kind of thing, you're saying, hey, like, I'm a real person. I care about solving this specific problem for you. Like, let me do that, and pay me whatever, pay me this much. I don't care, right? Early on, you take what you can get. So back when we were starting, for example, we didn't even know 100% that we're going to be doing marketing. We just talked to everybody in our network and we said, hey, what are your biggest problems? Here's 10 ideas to solve your problem. And then some people said, hey, can you do that for me? Can you solve that problem for me? You guys. And one of those people was a medical clinic, the general manager. And we said, hey, one of the problems is your marketing. You need to get more patients. You need to improve your Google ads. And they said, oh, can you run our Google ads for us? Right. And you have to be willing to, say yes and figure things out early on in the consulting kind of way, if that makes sense. So yeah, referrals, even in those days when you have zero traction, can still work as long as you have some personal credibility. People know you as an honest person. You're not going to take their money. You have a good reputation. You can build that up without having any kind of business, and it's worth doing for everybody.
Basically, don't be known as a gambler and you'll be fine. But
Pretty much.
so I think a lot of times when people think, oh, most of the people in my network would not be a good fit for this, so I'm not going to text them. But I think it's not about that person being a good fit. It's the chance that they might have just talked to somebody who had this problem and they can refer you over through them right now. Because 99% of the people in your network are probably not going to be like your direct customer that day, that week, that month.
Hmm.
But odds are through the spider web of their network, They might have I just had this conversation with somebody about Google Ads or building a website or whatever, like, I should introduce you to them.
Hmm.
I think that's the common misconception of people think that their direct network is gonna be their customer, and that's a little bit weird and scary, right? But it's about the person on the other side of that connection that they know that they might be able to connect you with, and you could do good for them.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. That's 100% right. The thing that you can communicate early on is not, I've got a huge track record and I've got an amazing success rate, whatever. It's just saying, hey, I'm an honest person. I'm a vulnerable person. I care about you and the problems you have and the problems that your friends might have or people might have. Like, let's have a real conversation. And, I'm going to put my best foot forward and, try really hard for not a lot of money just to see if we can make it work. And if you're candid with people and you've got a network of good people that you've built up over the years, then that's totally possible.
So, second to referrals, what would you say is the next big one?
I think this is true for us and true for a lot of traditional businesses is quote unquote like lead generation channels. There's a lot of these out there, things like, generic ones would be things like Thumbtack, for example, which is in almost every industry. Upwork for more digital oriented industries. These are places where you're basically paying a company per lead or per call to send you business. And generally, I recommend them for new people just because there's very little barrier to entry, right? So you can get business going right away. And if you've got, solid margins, you can snowball that into building up more sustainable channels because these channels that are not sustainable, right? Usually it's an auction system like Home Advisor. They'll send leads to 5 different people. Like you're going to be fighting to get those customers, but you can use that to build up things like your SEO or your own campaigns or your, community associations, networking, things like that, to build up more sustainable business.
So, you have a call coming up in 9 minutes, right? I'm just
Mm-hmm.
trying to orientate my questions here. Um, we'll go for a little bit longer. What's the secret to Upwork? Upwork is this big place with a lot of players in it. How do you break through? How do you get the most out of Upwork?
Yeah, I would say a key thing for these types of channels like Upwork is really getting as direct and personal as quickly as possible. So, for example, right when we were starting out, and with the new AI technology, maybe you could do this scalably. We would create screencast videos for every proposal. So
Loom.
somebody would post a proposal saying like, "Hey, I need to fix a button on my website." So I would literally get on a Loom video and I would say, "Hey, Joseph, here is how I'm going to fix the button on your website. Like, I'm a developer, I've got this many years of experience. I would log into your backend, I would do it like this." Like a really personalized proposal. Like basically invest more time and effort into each opportunity than anybody else will. And some people will recognize that, right? And eventually you can kind of systematize it. Use Nowadays you can use AI and things to make it more personalized. Um, but yeah, really, in the early days, you've got more time than money, so you've got to put your time to work, basically,
So
showing people.
you'd get more into the execution and the how to of you how you'd help them in the proposal.
Exactly, like give really tactical, personalized feedback to what they're looking for. Like, in some cases, you might even be doing like 80% of the work besides clicking the buttons, right?
Mhm.
So if their question is, how do I get my Google listing to show up like it's running into verification problems, I go to the support article and say, okay, here's the 10 steps you need to do, listing verification. I've done this for 2 or 3 people. Here's how I would do it for you, you know, and yeah, you're going to get a couple people that just take your advice and run with it. Who cares? You don't want those people as customers anyways. But the people that are like, wow, holy shit, this guy actually cares, you're going to get those people as your customers. And maybe early on, they're not going to be the highest paying customers. But if you're really new and you've got zero track record, then you've got to go out of your way to differentiate yourself.
Which makes a ton of sense because a lot of agencies that put out content, like long form content on YouTube, or whatnot. I mean, Gary Vee is a great example of that. He gets a ton of traffic coming to him inbound because he explains to you how to do it, but they're not hiring him for that information. They're hiring him for the actual execution. So
Hmm.
you can lead a horse to water, but they're gonna not really gonna drink. So you got to make them drink by
Hmm.
doing it for them.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. Dude, I know we're wrapping up here. Um, my favorite question: what do you want people to take away from this episode of all the things that we talked about? Uh, what do you think would be a good wrapper on this whole thing?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing I could tell people to think about is kind of a mindset change as far as with AI and stuff like that. Really try to go into it assuming that whatever you're imagining is possible, and try to prove yourself wrong. That rather than assuming I probably can't do this, or it's probably too early for that. Like really just try it. Like throw it at the wall, try a couple different angles and see what works. Like every month, every week, I'm surprised by what it can do that maybe I would have assumed that it can't do. And sure, it'll definitely fail at some stuff, but just like the Chat GPT from 9 months ago that couldn't add 2 plus 2, right? The Chat GPT from today, maybe the image recognition is a little off, or the image generation is a little off, or whatever, right? But 6 months from now, that's going to be solved. And so, you know, go in with a really open mind is my biggest piece of advice.
Awesome, dude. Thanks so much for having the time to come on, and hopefully we'll do another one down the road with an update. Maybe we'll be at ChatGPT 5 or 6 by then. It'll be even crazier.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be on. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Thanks, man.